Hey everybody, the Pro Bowl vote is here. An awesome Pro Bowl starts with awesome players, and your vote helps decides who gets a spot on the AFC and NFC rosters. So show your love, cast your vote, and make sure your favorite players make it to the 2020 Pro Bowl. Vote today and be entered to win exclusive prizes at NFL.com/Pro Bowl vote.
The Around the NFL podcast shouldn't be running on subpar turf.
Welcome to another edition of the Around the NFL podcast presented by the United States Marine Corps. My name is Dan Hanzus, joined in a room filled with heroes Marc, Sessler, Chris Wesseling, and Gregg Rosenthal. What is up, boys?
Hey, Dan.
Woo! What's up, Marc?
Not too much. Feeling good. It's the middle of the week, almost.
How are you?
7 years, guys, together. This chemistry does
not even almost
doesn't
the
just
middle of the
happen
week.
overnight, listeners. I mean, you can't teach this.
We are entering week 11, Marc, effective Thursday.
Sure.
Famously, your view of what the NFL calendar is different than some others. Do you feel that we're halfway through the season yet?
I do. I also think that, it was a narrative for many years that by now I had basically given up on the sport and moved on to an off-season mentality. It's not true this time around.
You feel good. You feel fresh.
It wasn't true last year. I like to kill old narratives that aren't actually based in fact anymore. I'm enjoying the season the best I can. My team continues to be a hot mess on wheels, but that's been a consistent beeline through it all.
Well, you know what helps give you a little turbo boost? Your Super Bowl prediction, Seattle Seahawks.
That is on
in
fire.
In a classic, it's gonna give
fire.
you. It's like injecting one of those B12s or whatever into your veins.
When you can revise your Super Bowl pick in early November and then sort of just ride down the stretch.
You tweeted that out like it was some great prediction, and you picked it a week ago.
No one needs to know about the nuances involved. It just looks good right now.
It does give me an idea that right after Super Bowl, or with like 2 minutes ago in the Super Bowl when the game's decided, I will manipulate a photo to make it seem like it was a post with those Super Bowl teams, and then the score off by like 2 points. So if it's 27-21, I'll have it 28-23 and be like, oh, almost got it. Just missed it this
It works.
year.
It's an effective strategy. Employ it.
It gives me a chance to, bring up the fact that I got the Ravens 49ers Super Bowl score correct when we did our podcast way back in the day. Or did we not have a podcast back then? Maybe that was just NFL.com.
Nobody cares.
I predicted the blackout, though, which is a different type
good.
of prediction to nail.
Very good. I predicted the antler spray drama
A whole nother
leading
level.
into that game. Wes?
Wes wasn't with us at that point. He was at Roto.
Wes was on a dock with a drink in his hand and a laptop.
Wes was in Los Angeles.
On a barrel.
Wes
Not a
was in
care in
Los
the world.
Angeles reporting during that Super Bowl.
Footloose and fancy free.
All right. Anyway, that's the past. That was then. This is now. And we have a lot to get to. I mentioned Week 11. We're going to preview that first game. It's the Steelers at the Browns. I think we already talked about the Broncos game being a dirt nap game for the Browns. But actually, after some teams lose and the Browns win, if they figure out a way to win that game, people in Cleveland are going to be excited. I'll tell you that. I don't know about you, Marc. People in Cleveland.
I will be.
Yes. We will also. We were thinking about this, with coaches, and this will become a bigger and bigger storyline as we get closer, because now it's reached the stage in the NFL where a full quarter of the coaches get fired every year. I mean, that's crazy. 1/4 of the coaches go down. It's
not like a rule from the competition committee.
Not a rule.
Imagine if it was. Now that would be kind of fun.
I mean, not
fun
for
wouldn't be
everyone,
the right word, but it would be intriguing.
They wouldn't stick with the rule anyway.
So I looked it up about 3 months ago, almost 3 months ago exactly. I wrote a column on this site about hot butts and the hot butt rankings for head coaches. That's not the headline they ran, but that's what it was. So we could resurface that list and check in where those coaches are and see what we think about coaches as we enter kind of the home stretch of the regular season. And it also neatly ties in with, and we've been talking about this, we've been building this up for a week, Erica Tamposi, her seg for the Around the NFL podcast.
See, you took this, what I wanted to do, and turned it into a little something different, which is cool because we like to create together, right?
Collaborative.
So you thought I was going to come out here and be all like, bitch but I'm not.
No, I would never say that, and I would never feel that.
Of course not.
I am excited because Ricky brought up the idea. Well, if we're talking about hot butts, what about our own our past and some stories when our butts got so hot we got kicked out of the chair? So we'll all share a little dismissal story from our youth. Downstairs in the newsroom, Greg's like, "Oh, I'm so functional everywhere I go. I can't even think of a place I got
I didn't
fired."
say that.
It was kind of like
I was
that.
a terrible waiter,
are you waiting?
but I'm not gonna like make up a story. There's
So you've
jobs-
never been fired, you're saying?
not fired. I mean, I've like stopped showing up or whatever. I have a story though.
I've only been
anyways.
fired once. Right, Ricky, I want you to share a story too,
Yep.
if you have one.
Strawberry season just ends.
Right, that's the
fired.
thing. You can't get fired from the strawberry job. That's
But did they ask you
6
back?
weeks and out.
When your contract
I-
came up, did they say, "Let's re-up"?
There's certainly no contract. Everything is highly illegal. What they were doing, and I was not back in the West. That was the summer where I realized I'm never living in Western Massachusetts ever again, and I haven't. I've stuck to that.
I have multiple firings.
As a
so
tear
if you
rolls
only-
down Deb Rosenthal's face.
She got out as soon as not long after I did. She knew. Nothing wrong with Western Mass. Great place, but you don't got to go back. You forgot to mention. I mean, it had to do with the hashtag, and then I was fired. See,
Which was
Eric
trending.
trying to bring up a trending topic.
Man, that's great.
You always mention like we ride the zeitgeist. You know,
ride that
we're-
zeitgeist.
We're like up
Thanks to
with
you.
the times. So I sent a bunch of different ideas, and I think this was a good one.
So, yes, there is a hashtag out there. The hashtag is, again, what?
And then I was fired.
So we're going to share that story and then talk about coaches who will be fired potentially. But before we do that, yes, one of the games of the year, it's certainly in the conversation, Monday Night Football at the Big Bell Bottom. Hit it, Ricky.
Myers steps back. At the 45, waits for the snap. Michael Dixon puts it down. That kick is away. And that kick is good! The Seahawks win! It's good! From 42, the Seahawks in overtime win for the second time in 2 weeks. And they beat the undefeated, now once defeated, San Francisco 49ers. What a game on Monday Night Football. The Seahawks win in overtime, and Jason Myers does it. What a game.
Oh, I love watching Russ and Pete Carroll run out to the middle of the field together, both just yanking each other's sweatshirts.
Ah! What a game. Steve Rabel, Warren Moon with the call. Jason Myers hits the field goal in the final play, the final seconds of overtime, lifting the Seahawks to a dramatic 27-24 win over the 49ers in Santa Clara, handing the Niners their first loss of the season, turning the NFC West into a wide-open race between two teams that figured to make serious noise in January. What a game. Chris Wesseling, so many storylines to hit here. The overtime alone you could, write a book about. But what was your big takeaway as the Seahawks celebrated in a game that Russell Wilson called the craziest game he's ever been a part of?
Yeah, I felt like the broadcast booth was trying to make this the Jimmy G referendum game, and I didn't see that. I saw this. I will always remember this as the Jadeveon Clowney imposing his will game. Brian Baldinger said it's the best game he's seen by a defensive lineman all year, and it ranks with any game in J.J. Watt's or Von Miller's career, according to Baldy. I don't know about that. I don't know how that's measured, but he was constantly in Jimmy G's grill.
Constantly.
It was maybe the healthiest the San Francisco 49ers offensive line has been since September, and it was also their worst game of the year by far for that group up front. And it was mostly Jadeveon Clowney with some help from Jerron Reed, but Clowney just taking over. And he's sort of like the bizarro Kirk Cousins. He does most of his damage in nationally televised games against great teams.
And they both and Kirk Cousins got paid, as we know, so you could still do your damage when people aren't watching and get paid a ton of money as a quarterback. But when you do it in prime time, and if you're a defender, Clowney and Gregg, you remarked this on Twitter. It was one of the first things that came to my mind as that game unfolded, and he was making play after play, living in the backfield, causing fumbles, scoring touchdowns. He is going to be one of the highest paid football players in the league in a few months, and a lot of that will tie into what he did. It was almost like he finally, and I know football heads out there, well, if you really watch him week to week, he's a game record. But no. It's also he hasn't ever quite lived up to this what we expected.
As a pass rusher.
As a pass rusher, especially when he was hailed as an LT figure coming out of South Carolina. This was the game kind of people expected coming out of college, and it couldn't have come in a bigger spot.
Well, his career has been defined by playing his very best in December and the playoffs. I was at the wild card game that he won, where I think he was almost as impressive as this one. He had a game late last season. I think it was against the Eagles, which was very similar to this one. And if you look at his PFF score, every year, September and October is kind of okay, and then you get to November and it's pretty good. And then it takes off, and he's been money. It was one of the best defensive performances I've ever seen. How could it be better? They didn't touch him. I thought the 2 tackles returning probably hurt them because they weren't ready to play. They couldn't get a hand on Clowney, and the previous 2 tackles they had in there had been playing pretty well. So many of those moves that he made, especially against Staley, but McGlinchey too, he just made a move before them, and they literally didn't touch him. I mean, it was wild to see, and he talked about it after the game, just the energy that Seahawks team played with from the first snap. Defense is a little different, where this has been a terrible Seahawks defense this year, but they weren't, they were playing with their hair on fire from the very first snap. I thought it was the best game of the year by far. I don't think, to me, there was anything even close, because it just felt like a playoff intensity.
I'd want to go through it, but I mean, certainly with the setting and the teams involved, for sure.
And like they added Quandre Diggs, whatever the reason is, they all just played much better as a group than they ever have.
It was the kind of game that made me wish, although this would be a scheduling absolute mega nightmare, that every game could be in prime time, because there is undoubtedly this extra energy that especially comes to a game like this, pitting 2 rivals where their place in the division is changing before our eyes, and everyone shows up. And there are these contrarians out there that said it wasn't the game of the year. It's not even a great game because it's sloppy. There were turnovers. Right. Excuse me.
Your take is sloppy.
Well, by the way, most people that go watch football and want to just forget about their day-to-day lives, turnovers are exciting. Turnovers where the ball is bouncing around and then suddenly Jadeveon Clowney rolls into the end zone and becomes this dominant force right there in the middle of the game. That's enjoyable. It wasn't just Seattle, because San Francisco's line gave Russell Wilson nightmares, 5 sacks of their own. There were 7 turnovers in this game, 5 lost fumbles, 2 picks. It was chaotic and beautifully chaotic.
Right. You saw when the 49ers were down 21-10, you thought the game was over. That was the first time they've been really like hit in the mouth all year. And they get a little break, but they made the play on that, touchdown fumble return, and then they turned it up. Just the swings in it were amazing. And I think the 2 quarterbacks each had their worst game of the year. Like it was a defensive. It reminded me so much of 49ers Seahawks in 2013-14. I mean, that NFC Championship game, if you go back to it, one of the great games of the last decade. I mean, you could call that sloppy too, because there was a lot of hard hitting and turnovers and big plays by defense.
I noticed there were a lot of the big plays are being made by new faces. You have Dre Greenlaw makes the interception in overtime, only playing because Quan Alexander just got put on IR and is out for the year. Jacob Hollister has become one of the most important pieces in Russell Wilson's aerial attack 2 weeks in a row now.
Well, the Seattle Patriots won that game last night.
Gordon
Hollister and Josh Gordon.
Overtime.
Biggest third down of the game, Josh Gordon beats Richard Sherman.
Chase McLaughlin just signed off the street in the limelight there at the end. You had Goodwin and Dante Pettis. You got those guys not a factor at all. They're 2 best receivers last year. You can't even count on them when Sanders and Kittle are out.
I think there is a temptation, and I wrestled with this last night. I was like, what should I do with the Niners, because the power rankings were due. I kept them at 1 because I thought even though they lost, their first loss of the season, also when you factor in their opponent, that was always going to be a dogfight. I don't think any less of them. Now I know with Jimmy G, and one thing that on the ESPN telecast, Booger was getting after, getting after Jimmy G a little bit. He was careless with the football. He got away with some turnovers. But you also need to factor in some things, such as we talked about Clowney and how it was a turnstile. He was constantly had pressure in his face. And then when you have George Kittle up in the luxury suite, and you have Emmanuel Sanders in the locker room and then on the bench with a rib injury, it did shine a light. The only thing that I would say that I'd be a little nervous about was the depth on their offensive playmaker side. Matt Breida left this game also with an injury. Kendrick Bourne had a terrible drop. Deebo Samuel went over 100 yards, but he had a drop that hurt him. They targeted Ross Dwelly a lot. These are guys that maybe aren't ready for prime time, and you saw it, and I think that affected Garoppolo's performance because there was this urge, and like I said, Booger said it, Jimmy G's not ready for this, but he can't do it alone. I don't think he's like that super-duper star quarterback, and that explains some of the troubles.
That bothers me, and I agree with Wes, the idea of pushing a referendum on Jimmy G, who has started fewer games than, at this point, Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. He has started the same amount of games as Sam Darnold. And because he's been entrenched with the Niners with an injury-loss season in the middle, you forget this guy's still learning the starter position. And he had everything thrown at him last night.
And you saw the last two games, his swings, though. I think it's fair, though, to also just point out it was his worst game of the year. When he was projected, his location was off on so many throws. Even the interception that I think it was Bourne dropped.
Going high.
A lot of the drops, he wasn't putting him on people. He had open receivers, and I did think, people talk about Tom Brady's quiet feet. I mean, his feet and the way he was going through his progressions just felt very frenetic, and it's natural that piled up over the game. But I also would say the first quarter was kind of a disaster for him, and so that wasn't necessarily just Clowney.
But yet we say he looked maybe happy feet, and the way that first overtime drive started was not great. But he had them in field goal position, and if Chase McLaughlin, that poor guy, makes that kick, we're talking about a totally different situation right now, and the Niners are 9-0, but the poor guy yanked it into the tunnel. Kicking is a hard gig, man, and that changes everything around the Niners. So that was my thought in the sense that, yes, you want to win, especially at home against a division rival, but don't bury the Niners off one loss because it was a coin flip.
What people like Booger and other cognoscenti around the league.
Nice hesitation there, too. I like it.
What they want to see is they know that Jimmy Garoppolo's had probably the easiest quarterback job of anyone in the league this year. Always playing with the lead, always having a great running attack, always having Kyle Shanahan scheming people open, always having George Kittle as the best player on the field. And they want to see what happens when those things aren't there. But then you tend to overlook things like his receivers dropping 10 passes, like Jadeveon Clowney being in his lap every time. So it's not a referendum. It's a one-game thing.
It's a bad game, and a lot of it wasn't on him, but a lot of it was. I think it was Russell Wilson's worst game too, and that's the thing. Like, I don't think you need to pretend that. I think Russell Wilson, if anything, it helped his MVP case. To me, I now am assigned to put it into the debrief every week.
It's been sponsored on you.
Well, I guess it's a sponsor. And to me, Wilson's way ahead of the pack. And last night did
way ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I think Wilson's been so good every single week. And makes his teammates so much better. I look at it as like, what's your average game? And his average, like, he doesn't have any down weeks. But there's also 7 weeks to go, which is an eternity.
It's funny. He has the most famous interception, arguably, in NFL history, Super Bowl 49. He threw just a crushing interception in the red zone in overtime, that first possession where it looked like they might be going in.
Went 3 and out the next drive, too.
Went 3 and out. And yet, when he got the ball back again, and Greg, I'm sure you want to talk about Kyle Shanahan's clock management as well. When he got the ball that last time, I still thought to myself,
oh, yeah,
there's no one else I want in the league in this moment because he has such a steady hand, and he's a guy that even when he does occasionally make mistakes because he's human, you just trust him to not be ever overwhelmed by a moment, and sure enough, he just led him right down the field and got Jason Myers.
He trusts himself.
To win the
game.
I
I know that Russell Wilson is a magnet for criticism because he's a bit robotic and a bit athlete robot minded, and that's easy to poke fun at, but at quarterback, the way that he operates week after week, he's the opposite of Jimmy G, where it seems like you're always watching the Seahawks have to mount a comeback down 13 or 17 points with 12 minutes to go, and it's like, I was watching that, and it was a tough game in our house because Simone is a suddenly revived and all plugged in Niners fan.
She's not alone. A lot of Niner fans are all back in.
Our 7-year-old Colton,
the big bell bottom was rocking.
Yeah.
Our 7-year-old Colton, who this was the game where he was rooting so hard for the Niners that when they lost, it was like, Mom, that was worse than me losing on my video game in the garage. It's like it hurt him. But I tried to tell him the Niners are not. This is not the end because it's what's happening around Jimmy G, and they're very consistent. And what they've done so far is not fluky, and they have an awesome coach.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about them. I still think they have the inside path, even though they lost this game at home.
I noticed, Greg, you are usually on these things. You did not criticize Kyle Shanahan for not getting closer on the field goal attempt.
I don't think I did tweet one little thing about it, but I think he probably regrets his play calls on 2nd and 2, setting up the missed field goal. Are you talking about regulation when they hit it, or
I'm
or
talking
overtime?
about overtime.
I think he probably regrets that more than the clock management, which we'll get to, and I think he should regret. 2nd and 2 and 3rd and 1, running the ball with the best running team in the league. I don't think they just won. You know, it wasn't the play calling. You got to get 2 yards. Both teams had a chance to end the game. Seattle should have won the game in regulation, but they couldn't pick up a yard with Chris Carson. That ended up giving the 49ers a chance back. The 49ers 2nd and 2 with this running attack. You figure 2 runs, whatever he chose, I'm sure he maybe would like to choose a different run, but you figure you can pick that up against Seattle. And Poona Ford was pretty great all night too, and they just stuffed him. You got to give them the credit.
And Shanahan did catch heat because there was a position after the Seahawks go 3 and out. The Niners get the ball back at 3 or 4 minutes to play, and they
1:45 to play.
Oh, geez. All right.
Russell Wilson went 3 and out, and they punted under 2 minutes left with no timeouts.
So
left.
1:45, and if you play it, well, I guess the way to play it is do something safe and keep the clock moving early in the down and distance, and then put it in a situation where you either tie or you win. But I got no time for that, and I hate that.
That's not the way to look at it, though.
What was the criticism?
Here's what I would say. It's the same as at the end of the half. It's the same as the end of regulation. You have 1:45 and a timeout. That is eternity. That's not going to burn any of your time. Whether you want to call a run or a very safe pass, it's not that you're playing for overtime. You're just trying to not leave them any time to go win the game.
We're talking about in overtime.
In overtime. It's not like you're playing for the tie, rather, is what I meant to say. You just don't want to leave them any time. There's a million screen passes or a run or whatever you want to do. It's not like they would have run out of time. They had all the time in the world. That's just obvious and good coaching. You do the same thing at the end of the first half in that situation. You do the same thing at the end of regulation, and you don't let them have the ball because
failure. And we were talking about
possession
this with Garrett
is what
on
matters.
Sunday. There's also some accountability. There's a failure of execution. They had 3 chances to have a complete pass, and they go 0 for 3.
Right, and that
stops the clock.
Like the great. There were so many great plays in this game, but the Shaq Griffin,
great play.
Shaquille.
What a game by him.
Not Shaquem.
Yeah. Good year.
Shaquem played quite a bit over Ziggy Ansah. First defensive snaps, I think, since his week 1 of last year, Shaquem Griffin in that game. But Shaquille Griffin, that knockaway in overtime, I mean, that was an underthrown ball by Jimmy G. You can't kill him for it, but I'm sure when he's watching that film, he wishes, I wish I got that out there for him. We might have won the game, All
right, and finally, Greg, I mean, you've vindictively locked against them in this game, which cost you. When it was 21-10, I got a little trolly on Twitter, and I came after you a little bit about how you were reflecting and in pain for leaving Seahawks corner. And I think this game, more than any game that we've seen in some time, is such a reminder why you never leave Seahawks corner, because it's just
They're
fun.
Too good. It is
and
fun.
it usually, like I said the other week, it usually works out for the best on Seahawks corner.
Right, they're 7-0. I'm not counting that Saints game where they scored a touchdown on the last play. They're 7-0 in 1-score games.
Oh, they swallowed a horseshoe.
It is outrageous. But I love watching them, so I don't know. I
can't have you back, though.
I don't need to be on
Marc
the corner.
took your room.
I did.
Like a game like this.
I'm not giving it up.
Like the game like this, I enjoy it so much, and I enjoy this 49ers team a ton too. I enjoy both these teams.
But you like every team, Greg. So
no.
in terms of relativism, that
they're
tells
fun,
us nothing
They're
at all.
fun to watch. I don't like the Jets. I don't really like the Browns right now because they're
you
tough
don't like
to watch.
The Jets?
I like good football.
Wow.
It's like what? Like a game like this is so much fun. It makes me worried about why I put so much like emotional enjoyment and energy into like a sporting event. You know what I mean?
Filibustering.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm concerned about
It's
you
like
too, but
it's like the same thing. I was like, why do I cry at like the finale of Top Chef or any movie that happens?
So sensitive.
But like you never would cry in like normal life.
You know,
I think I cried.
I couldn't go to sleep, and I wasn't rooting or really cared who won too much, and I couldn't go to sleep for this game because I was thinking about
do a job you love and never work a day in your life. Is that what they say? Something like that.
Something like that.
What we could do, Marc, is hollow out one of those hutches, one of those eaves maybe, and take our ski equipment out of there and turn it into a room that maybe Gregg could come back into. But
I don't think
it needs to be that easy.
The room
of
is
a
by
path back.
3 feet by 3 feet. It's going to be a little tight.
They're too good. They're too good right now. You know, I liked them when they were just a spunky 9-7 team. They might go win. They might go win.
When in 1988,
No,
they
last year.
got good pretty quickly.
Last year, I mean.
Oh, all right.
Anyway, you were going to say something, Wes, about emotions?
Yeah, I almost cried in that Cardinals-Bucks games over the weekend. That game might have pulled me out of the midseason doldrums.
Right, like what hole in the rest of my
Wait, why
life
did
is
you
my
almost
enjoyment for this covering up?
I'm all in on Kyler Murray now, and I might be all in on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a fun team to watch.
This is great.
We're seeing Devin White with flashes, just running through people like they're not even there.
I love it.
Not that it's been a bad season or anything, but we needed a game like this.
That was good.
You just
a perfect time for a great game. All right. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. Forget the news. I don't want to talk about the news. We're not doing the news because we got to get right to it. Ricky, as promised, the segment, the hashtag that all the kids, all the millennials, all the Gen Zs out there are talking about was when I was fired.
And then I was fired.
Okay, boomer. And then I was fired. And then I was fired.
Hashtag, and then I was fired.
Ricky, why don't you get us going? I'm curious. Your seg, your rules. You're
Okay.
first.
Well, I mean, originally I thought we were going to only antiquate this to football news because, sort of like Gregg, I've never been fired. I do such a good job in all of
Sure,
my
of course.
jobs. But there was one time where I wasn't asked back. And I was a production assistant on a reality TV show in Rhode Island. They were filming for the day.
Whoa, a lot of red flags.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to get my start. I was in college.
Gotcha.
I was like skipping school to work for minimum wage like once in a while to get on a TV show to try to, work my way up into directing and whatever. And this was for the TV show Dance Moms. And the woman is now in jail. B. Miller.
So she got fired by society in a way.
Right, but so did I because I, to be a PA, you got to just put the blinders on and get through the couple of years of getting beaten. You're the first one there, you're the last one off.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say anything to anyone. If you get someone's coffee wrong, it's the end of the world. I mean,
She gone.
Bye.
She gone.
So one of my jobs was to clean out Abby Lee Miller's trailer in between two of her scenes, and it's reality TV, so it's like her driving around, and the amount of chocolate wrapper candy bars and everything all over the place was so I was cleaning this up, and I literally was like, it was out of a movie. That should have been the reality TV show of what was in this trailer. So I was cleaning this up, and she is known on TV for screaming at people. So I'm like, okay, it's fake or whatever. No, she's like that in real life. She is a word that I wouldn't even say. She is such a miserable person. But another PA, this other little girl and we were 18. So she goes out and she comes back and she was like, I wanted Ocean Spray, not cranberry juice, but pineapple, a specific brand. And the girl comes back, she's sweating and she's like, Miss I went to the store and I got all these different kinds of pineapple juice, but unfortunately there wasn't the Ocean Spray brand.
Uh-oh.
And this chick takes all the pineapple juice and dumps it out in front of her and was like, don't bother coming back to set then, and threw all the empty bottles that I had just picked up of all of the trash.
What a nightmare.
And I was like, hey, it wasn't my place to say this, but I was like, hey, I don't think we should be like throwing bottles at 18-year-olds, like empty bottles. And she was like, and you just lost your ticket too, honey. And then
That's a firing.
I wasn't asked back the next day.
That's a firing, but you did the right thing.
Wow.
Who pleaded guilty to felony bankruptcy fraud and was sentenced in May 2017 to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison. She has since been released.
Oh, nice.
Good thing is, I mean, she sounds very drunk with power. Would not be the case of anyone attached to this show.
Right.
In terms of, your future employment.
She does have an event coming up in Guadalajara. The dance company, Miércoles.
Stay there, honey.
13. I don't know what 13 is.
Yeah, I really cried hard that day.
Well,
not for me, for that poor girl. Like, how could someone?
That's traumatic.
Someone like that.
That's messed up.
Cool.
People are bad sometimes. All right, so we'll pepper in this personal stories. But yes, as I said, back on August 16th, which is almost 3 months ago now.
Time flies.
3 months ago, wrote the NFL head coach job security rankings. Who's safe? Question mark on hot seat? Question mark. No. They didn't give me the headline I wanted. The hot butt rankings. So let's just cycle through this list, and we'll see what's changed and what hasn't changed since August. All right. So I'm going to go quickly through some of these. Belichick, McVay, Sean Payton, John Gruden, and Doug Peterson in the top 5. All safe right now. All good.
Except I think Gruden was there because of the huge contract attached to him, and there was a lot of people. I thought this season could be an ultra disaster, and he'd still be safe because it was the Raiders. But I think he's safe now because he's doing a great job this year.
He's doubly safe.
Andy Reid, Frank Reich, Pete Carroll at 8, and then Matt Nagy. He's the final one in tier 2. That one is Matt Nagy. He's probably okay, right? This has been a bad year so far, but is there any scenario where his butt gets hot?
I don't think so, because are they gonna flush out the GM and Nagy and start all over again? They've tended to not make quick choices.
Oh, my mic's on. So someone from behind the scenes just came in, and I said, "Yo."
Oh, hey.
But,
Yo, what's
but keep going.
It's not really possible for him to have a worse year than he's had.
Yeah.
Like they have their worst running attack, I think, since 1980. Their tight ends are non-existent. The quarterback took many steps back in his development, and they have the same personnel as last year, just about.
You would like to see him with a different quarterback.
You would think that Trubisky will be the scapegoat, and they will find someone else to be that quarterback. And if we have more problems next year, Nagy would be in a lot.
I feel like it's a fair scapegoat.
I mean, he won Coach of the Year last year.
Sometimes the scapegoating is earned. Yeah.
I mean, it's earned. It's not totally out of the wilderness.
Dick Duran once won Coach of the Year as a coach of the Chicago Bears as well, and then won 4-12 the next year.
Marc, tell us when you were fired.
Well, there have been multiple times, like I said, but I dug into the Gregg.
Pick one of the many.
I'll pick one of the many, and these mostly all happened.
Wait, how many times have you been fired?
There was a period I got canned from a job at age 16, but I will put it this way. I did about 100 temp jobs, and sometimes you land and they just think that you're the perfect fit, and other times you're not, and there were many times I was not. This is one of those jobs, a temp job, that was, if you work, we'll keep you around for a while, and I really wowed them with my Excel skills in a company called Cash Now, which there's a lot of places called Cash Now at this point.
Hey, Excel skills in what year was this?
This is 2001.
Oh yeah, they were handy in 2000.
Absolutely.
Wait, were you like a bail bondsman or something?
So it was Cash Now
Sherry?
places typically are like a storefront where people down on the luck for the most part might have gotten some sort of work or even an unemployment check, and you come in and give them cash for 60% of the check and keep the rest. Very nefarious, and I did not. It was a family-run business. I was not part of the family. They brought me in to do this Excel business. I will make the story quick to say that fate intervened. That I had just moved to Denver, and I was living with this couple, very good friends named Kiwi and Leslie. They're a married couple, and so I'm like in this spare bedroom just trying to pay rent. So I took this Cash Now job.
Kiwi?
Excuse me?
Kiwi?
His name is John, but he's from New Zealand, so I've called him Kiwi.
Okay.
Yep. And what happened was 9/11 happened.
I didn't think Erica's interjection could get worse than the last one.
Or
I think
yours.
I might have done it.
But 9/11 unfurls out of nowhere on a morning in September.
Yeah, you could say that it was out of nowhere. Yep.
Right, out of nowhere.
Thank you for that.
According to most. And I'm sitting there in this hotel. This is where our company was based out of a hotel room, which should tell you something right there. But I was there doing this Excel spreadsheet, watching New York burn to the ground, and all my friends are in New York. I had just moved from New York City, and so I'm trying to get on the. As you remember, that trying to call anyone from the East Coast, you couldn't get through basically. And I'll never forget this because I wrote it down. This gem of an individual, this boss who ran this company, was already tired with 9/11. 14 minutes into it, because he wanted us focused on our
cash
job.
now. Not cash later.
Now, not cash in 2002, right now. And he kept saying, let's stay focused, people. Eyes on keyboard. Eyes on keyboard. And I'm trying to figure out what's happening.
9/11's going on?
Yeah, and so I went and I said, I have to go take a few phone calls.
Where was this? Denver?
This was in Denver. So in his world, it was not something, 9/11 was a regional issue and not a...
You're in a hotel.
Right, a
And you have a
backwater
boss.
hotel room.
Was he have like a whipping stick or something for people that don't keep their eyes
He
on
was
it?
he was a very grating man, and so he was annoyed with my reaction to 9/11 in general. And the next day, he claimed it was budget cuts, but I mean, please, he basically fired me. And a mile away from the place, I'm driving home in my lease car, got into a major car accident, and suddenly had no job and no car. Out of there.
All right, the next. I like that story. I hate the story, and I hope that man I hope he's in. Where's that wretched Aller? Where's she?
On tour with
she's
her.
out now, or
Guadalajara?
now.
He's making money off her 700,000 Twitter followers.
Send the 9/11 guy there too. All right,
9/11 guy.
now
That's a man with perspective.
the third tier back on August. This was the feeling good, feeling secure, life is good tier. Begins at number 10 with Mike Tomlin, Bruce Arians, Sean McDermott, Bill O'Brien, Adam Gase, and Mike Vrabel. Who is not feeling good, feeling secure?
Only
life
one
is
of
good?
those. I think the rest of them are all fine. I think it's pretty clear.
Gase.
I mean, it's crazy that I've loved these reports in New York the last couple of weeks with Pat Shurmur rather, and Adam Gase, where it's like, hey, we're going to be patient. And then you read the article and it's like, well, we're just not firing him this week. It's his first year on the job. That's not being patient. Like the fact that you need ownership sources to say we're not going to fire the first year guy in the middle of the season is ominous.
You read all the time about what owners are looking for in head coaches these days, and Adam Gase is the polar opposite of just about everything they're looking for in a head coach. Like able to deal with the media, always has a nice bearing and leadership about him, is polished.
Makes eye contact.
Yeah, there's nothing that Adam Gase does that is like what the new breed of head coach is supposed to be.
They nailed it.
And the offense is, until last week, tracking to be one of the worst in the history of the NFL.
Averaging 12 points per game before last week.
Mike Tomlin has solidified his standing, right?
Absolutely. He would bump up to the higher tier for sure. I don't think Bruce Arians.
So would
is
McDermott
in
in my
any
mind, just
danger.
because I feel like he is there and he's staying and for a while.
I left out one, Anthony Lynn.
I was going to say, what if the Chargers, and the things have been a little bit better, but that was an ugly loss last Thursday night. I mean, what if they went off a cliff? Is Anthony Lynn that safe on a team that's going through a ton of transition to begin with? Or maybe that helps him.
I don't know. I can't blame him for their injuries.
He also is coming off Nagy, the fact that he was a Coach of the Year candidate and got some votes last year. I don't know if they're Telesco, I don't think, who hired him would have any interest in firing him. So I don't know if the Spanoses want to clean house totally.
I'll say this.
O'Brien's worth
Telesco's
mentioning.
been great, too.
Right. He's done a good job.
No, I was going to say, if you go from 13 to 16 on this list, which is Lynn, O'Brien, Gase, Vrabel, I don't think any of those guys are necessarily safe if the wheels fall off totally in these last 7 weeks. Do you guys think? I think all of them could be in danger in that spot. Remember, 8 guys on average the last few years are going.
Bill O'Brien just seems like he's been through 50 wars at this point and has more power than ever before.
Right. I think took a lot of risks with what he did before the season. He's got to keep it going. He's got to make the playoffs, but he's on track to do all of that. I mean, he might be watching Jadeveon Clowney last night and wish that he didn't have to pay Jadeveon Clowney $7 million to go away this year. Nice job by Clowney.
Yeah, you could say that. Wes, at the post office, you left voluntarily from there, right?
I left voluntarily. I've never been fired, but I did have a one-day job.
You're not giving him any grief. See, he wasn't fired.
I mean, I don't know.
He kept it to himself. He didn't. He wasn't
You asked
gloating
me.
about it.
Before I said anything,
you're like, oh, this is so hard. I've been so valued everywhere I've gone.
Before I said anything, you literally said, "Oh, I bet Gregg, you'll say that you've never been fired." So
that's fair.
It came from you.
I apologize.
I was. It was my start of my first year of college, my freshman year. So I was 18 years old, and my dad, I think, pulled a string or two to get me a job with a big ice company in Cincinnati as a driver. Driving a monster truck around these back roads of Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio. This is the days before GPS. I had no idea where I was going. And to my naive 18-year-old eyes, the directions I was given once I got out on the road, I could not make heads or tails.
And there's no Waze. There's no Google Maps.
None of
I'm
that.
going to like Owensboro County, which I've never heard of before, to drop off ice at like some country store, and there's no like vehicle training, so I'm trying to manage this 30-foot long truck, backing it into like these pony kegs and stuff. I end up coming back around midnight from my delivery, which was supposed to
with a truck full of water and bags.
It was like a Saturday afternoon. I want to watch college football, and all my friends are out partying, and all the other delivery drivers are back by 5 in the afternoon. Here it is midnight. I come back. I ended up not even making a couple of my last deliveries because it was so late and I couldn't find the place. Put the ice back in like the receptacle tank, and ended up spilling it all over the place. And I was just like, I am never coming back to this wretched job again. So I just no-showed, and I don't think my dad was too thrilled since he had pulled the string for me.
Classic let dad down in a big spot scenario.
That was a grow-up situation. Just too much too soon for me.
The next category is newbies. I kept these guys in a separate category, first-time head coaches, because typically they get more than 1 year. So let's see, do we think any of these guys are in trouble? I had Kingsbury at 17, Zach Taylor, who 3 months since this has been written still doesn't have a win. 18, Brian Flores, 19, Freddie Kitchens, 20, Vic Fangio, 21, Matt LaFleur, 22.
How did Gase get out of this group?
Because he's not a first-time coach.
Oh, I got it. I just like, how did he get boosted up?
Which was smart because he could be fired. These guys have more runway.
Kingsbury and LaFleur are on top of the world right now. I know Kingsbury's record isn't great, but he's done what you wanted him to do.
All
there.
Good.
Zach Taylor, I mean, he's with that mom-and-pop franchise that doesn't pay two coaches at the same time.
They're going to want to see him with the number 1 overall draft pick or the number 2 overall draft pick. I mean, they've got nice little they've got a nice little lead there for that pick.
Freddie Kitchens, there you go, Marc.
No, I mean, Zach Taylor also has shown me literally nothing, but I get it. It's a tough situation. Freddie Kitchens, the word that you
Andy
hear,
Dalton catching bullets the same way Zach Taylor is. A totally awful team.
Hold on though. All the time we talk about do something that differentiates you for one of these 32 jobs. I'm not saying he doesn't possess those skills. I haven't seen it. If I could make something up, but I'm not going to.
No, I think that's totally fair. I just think from Wes's point, I don't think he would be in any trouble. I don't think he'd be in trouble even if he went 0-16, but I guess you never know.
Kitchens would concern me because, you hear little rumblings behind the scenes, and the word or the type of word that seems to come up over and over, and it's not a shocking word if you're watching their games, is overwhelmed and not totally ready to certainly make in-game decisions. And the play calling, which in theory was the mind meld with Baker Mayfield and all this other stuff. The quarterback's regressed. The play calling is a weekly talking point, and it couldn't be more of a talking point than it was coming out of Sunday. And now what the coach killer in Cleveland typically is not handling business against your own division, which has been every Browns coach. And Thursday night, a lot of eyeballs on the team against the Steelers. We'll get into that game, but things could go very south or things could get a lot. I think from here to the end is what happens to Freddie Kitchens. The games will matter a ton.
Well, the hallmarks of poor coaching traditionally are sloppy play, too many penalties, and undisciplined. I mean, you've got the Jarvis Landry penalty after the touchdown. You don't see Belichick's teams doing this.
No.
You don't see other guys. He's the poster child right now for poor coaching.
I think Vic Fangio could only be in danger if the Broncos decide they want to reboot the entire machine and they get Elway out of that position and Elway's new guy replaces him wants his guy. That would be the only thing, but, I mean, that would be quite an overthrow of power there. Not impossible, though.
Doesn't seem like they want to. The ownership situation is very murky, and there's confusion and finagling going on behind the scenes when it comes to the ownership. So they seem like they want John Elway running the ship no matter what.
The first job I ever had is also the only job that I've been fired from. I was working at ShopRite, which was a major grocery store chain, still is, in the Northeast. And was not very good at the job for the reasons that listeners might be able to guess. My till was short several times.
Oh, no.
I was
basic,
the till counter for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Basic, because it used to be much more difficult. People paid with cash a lot more in the mid-'90s.
Oh, yeah.
Checks and cash, and you had to kind of balance your till at the end of the night. Now, I'm sure if you work an 8-hour shift at a grocery store, 90% of the transactions are going to be made with debit or credit, if not more. Back then, it was what, like 50-50?
A lot of checks.
A lot of money being exchanged, and so my till was short a couple times, but not to the point where I was getting fired. I was just put on this probation, like, hey, it's happened twice, it can't happen again.
Did they suspect you of potentially taking?
They always do because
Right.
it's young punk kids. Me, no, not at all. That was not who I was. But then near the end of the summer, my buddy Bob and I, his mother, Linda, ran her own small business where she sold crafts, little knickknacks and things of that nature, jewelry. And at the end of the summer at the Wildwood, New Jersey boardwalk, there was a big craft expo. I mean, this is where all the heavy hitters went.
Sure.
To end the summer for Labor Day weekend. And for Bob and I, it was the first time we ever got a chance to I would tag along with Bob, Linda, and Bob's sister, Lori, who hated me, and I returned the favor as well. We grew to like each other, but back then we were all young. But Bob and I, it was a golden opportunity to walk the boardwalk and stay at a hotel and try to talk to girls, and that was also like around the time. One time Bob and I met two girls, and then we agreed to meet the next night, and when we got to the meeting point, two other like dudes, like big dudes, and one had a big snake around his neck and a wife beater, a shirt on, and we just walked away because we lost. That guy's got a snake. We were defeated on the Wildwood Boardwalk. If you had a snake and you were taller and older than us, we knew we were already dead. That's beside the point. Anyway, this weekend was coming up, and I didn't really know how asking off really worked because I was so new to working. So I kind of forgot to ask until a week before, and then when I did ask, I didn't hear back, and then I just didn't go to work. And then when I came to work the following Tuesday after Labor Day weekend, I couldn't punch in. And they're like, oh, yeah, you were a no-call, no-show, so we fired you. I was like, oh, that's how things work. And you know what?
Love it.
I'd do it again because it was fun times down on the Jersey Boardwalk.
Now you're the man with the snake around your neck, and young people are scared of you.
Exactly. All right, here's the next group. John Harbaugh. This is the seat perhaps warmer than preferred. John Harbaugh, who might shoot all the way back up.
Oh, yeah.
To the top tier. Anyway, Ron Rivera.
He's in the top tier.
Yeah.
Ron Rivera at 24. Dan Quinn at 25. Mike Zimmer at 26. Jason Garrett at 27. And at number 28, Kyle Shanahan of the 8-1 49ers. So this is the second to last tier, the one you don't really want to be in. Shanahan obviously is moving all the way up to the first tier, but I would think that Jason Garrett, certainly Dan Quinn, and perhaps Ron Rivera all in danger here.
Well, I think Dan Quinn is going to lose his job. I think Rivera is the biggest mystery. Like, if they make the playoffs, it feels unfair to fire him, and yet I don't know if their new owner is going to just want to do a house cleaning with Rivera.
Everyone
and the general
keeps
manager.
saying
It's up
that.
in the air.
Everyone keeps saying the new owner, but I've never seen any indication that he does not like Ron Rivera.
Well, he didn't sign him to a contract, when Rivera wanted one. So that to me,
I'll shut up then.
I mean, it doesn't mean it's over. I just think he went into this year kind of knowing what the score was.
There's some fun stuff to unpack with Jason Garrett based off his press conference on Monday, but maybe let's save that for the Thursday Cowboys preview. Are they playing this week?
They are. They've already hit their bye, right?
All right, good.
Yes.
So we'll talk about Jason Garrett more on Thursday. And then, of course, Kyle Shanahan. In the piece I wrote that, they believe in him. They just have to kind of do it already. And they finally have kind of put it together after going 10-22 in those first 2 years. All right. Now, the danger group, number 29. Oh, before we do that. Actually, let me go through this and then Gregg's story. Danger group, Matt Patricia Lions, Doug Marrone Jaguars, Pat Shurmur Giants, and number 32, Jay Gruden. He gone. Who's the guy that feels the best right now? Because once you get off the hot seat and you're just getting paid money to do nothing, and all that pressure and stress is off your shoulders, I'm sure he feels better than any of the coaches in the league right now.
It's like when Rob Ryan got a phone call on a tropical beach that he had been let go by the Cowboys. Like right away, you run to the bar and just have a great night and say, "I'm still getting paid."
So I get to go on like unemployment on steroids for the next 2 years. All right, smell you later. Patricia, Marrone, Shurmur, are they all done?
I don't think Marrone's done. I think
I think they need to finish strong, Wes. That's what I think.
That's fair. If they go in the tank, maybe. But it seemed like their owner liked the way he handled the Jalen Ramsey situation, and maybe Tom Coughlin didn't handle it quite as well.
And losing Nick Foles and still being a viable team through most of that.
Yeah, I think the remaining, 7 games for them, it's going to tell his story.
Where are we at with Matt Patricia? I think it seemed like a month ago people were impressed with him, and now everybody's saying he was hired to fix the defense, and the defense is terrible.
It seems very up and down, you're right, in terms of how he's viewed. But remember, they fired Jim Caldwell after back-to-back 9-7 seasons. They go 6-10 last year, and nobody seemed particularly impressed. And then when this season kicked off, like Wes is saying, people are saying, wow, this team is making strides. The offense has certainly gotten better, and maybe they're buying into the culture, the Patricia/Belichick culture, but they have one of the worst defenses in football and seem to be heading toward 6-9-1 after 6-10.
Well, it's going to come down with all these, like who's doing the firing and how much do they really want to change their entire organization? Like in Jacksonville, does he want to fire Tom Coughlin and Caldwell and Marrone, which feels like the way that he would probably do it if it happened? That's a lot. In Detroit, does the Ford family, I don't know who's making the decisions. Is it Martha? I mean,
TBD.
Does she want to fire Bob Quinn, who brought in Matt Patricia? Because Bob Quinn's not going to be firing Matt Patricia and start over after just 2 years. I tend to think probably not, unless things go really crazy bad. But that
I want to see
in
year 3 of Matt Patricia. I think invariably a lot of these guys get dumped before they even get to execute whatever plan they put into place and convince an owner to get the job to begin with. The Lions have been more interesting this season than they have been in my 20s, 30s, or 40s.
That's fair. If
that year that they should have beaten the Cowboys in the playoffs, they were a good team.
I know, and their record was better, but for some reason they still registered to me as a raging dullard fest. That for something about them this time around got me
That's a new
interested.
one. Raging's not new, but raging dullard.
I don't know how many more descriptions can you come up with for this team.
All right, Gregg, close us out with a little Rosenthal hot butt action.
Let's see. I've quit some jobs. I quit one on the first day by phone, which they quickly told me, like, this is a small industry. This is not a smart move. That was a segment producer job for an action sports show.
And then I
left the city 6 days later. But I'm going to think of another one where I
leaves town.
Yeah, I left LA and it took me 15 years, 10 years to come back before that guy was gone. In the summer one year I was a waiter. And it's the end of the summer and people are starting to leave and party or whatever. And I guess I had maybe asked for some days off and they were just like, yeah, we need some extra shifts. Like you can't just take those days off at the end of the summer. It was my last few days, of the summer, and I just wanted to party, and I was just like, no. Which, okay, that would have been fine. I would have maybe not left on the best terms, but I stupidly went with my friends to the deck at the restaurant to drink on one of those days, and the manager there, Shepe, was not happy. And started talking to me about it, and we just left. And I'll never forget walking down like the plank of the restaurant and him yelling after me, just like, "That's really effing cool, Gregg. That's really effing cool." Just like screaming at me. And it didn't help that I was also renting an apartment in the back of Shepe's house.
Gregg, you played this perfectly.
And I had a roommate at the time who I now do the podcast with, Anthony. And immediately after leaving for the summer, I kept getting these calls from Shepe, these long messages, and he wanted his very expensive bottle of vodka back from his room. And I was like, we didn't take any vodka. Like, we didn't touch it. Like, I made Anthony just swear.
From his room?
Like, we were staying in like an attic rented base. Like,
and he kept his
thing.
Alcohol in the
I don't
room
know.
he was renting out?
There was like, there was.
I mean, he trusted the renter. Let's start.
Yeah, it was
there,
one
so.
huge thing, and I was just like, he was like, that was a really expensive bottle, Gregg, and all this stuff, and I made Anthony swear to me he didn't take it, so I was just like, I don't know, man, it wasn't us, and then,
what do you think old Sheppy's
a
doing
few
these
weeks
days?
later, I realized, why did I believe Anthony? Of course he stole the alcohol.
Wait, could you have done a worse job with Shepe in general? I mean, you disgraced his business. You thieved items out of his
Just disrespecting him as a
space.
man. That's what you did.
I don't know.
And you weren't honorable.
And I was a bad waiter, too. I was in one of the worst sections. I was a 20th percentile waiter.
Wow. All right. Well, there you go. So if you've been fired before, don't feel bad about it, because everybody's got a story. Some reflect worse on themselves than others, like Gregg's story.
I mean, Shepe, please.
Did you ever? Maybe that's something that would be one of those cool, like,
Yeah,
close
call him
off
back.
the-
Call him back up.
Maybe on the show. if
Like
you call
reunite,
Shepe.
Like the 12
Reunite,
steps
yeah.
thing?
Yeah, just give him a call.
Hey, like what was that show? The movie with John Cusack.
High Fidelity?
High Fidelity. Just
Yeah,
10, 20
check back
years
in.
later. It's like, hey, I know I wasn't right, and I was in the wrong. And
I mean,
sorry.
Shepe was not a popular character among basically every staff member there. And
I would imagine he has a side of this story, though, that we would like to hear. So.
Ricky, can we track down Shepe?
Yeah, I'll look. The fact that you went there to drink.
Well, that
and
was
didn't show up,
ridiculous.
like,
That's
was-
audacious.
that was stupid. I was also like underage. Like there's a whole lot of
breaking laws.
a lot of
state laws
stuff.
also.
And also, you could lose your liquor license if you serve underage. So that would have destroyed Shepe's business.
entire
I
life.
mean, he didn't own it, but yes.
Oh well,
he was
but why
running
are
it.
there caveats to whether that would have been a good idea or good for Shepe? I don't know.
Thursday night football. Good seg, Ricky.
Oh, man.
Thanks. That was fun.
You did it.
Are you happy with your hot butt rankings then? And is it sort of giving you a little bit of insight to what?
Yeah,
next
no, I
time?
think it's a reminder of what makes following sports so fun. Things change. You think you know everything, and then a lot changes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to it. Thursday night football. The Cleveland Browns at home against the Steelers. Their last meeting, the first meeting this season, and their first meeting in over a year. They played both their games early last year. So here are the Browns at 3-6. They got the W against the Bills, Marc. I watched that game yesterday. And you kind of alluded to this on Sunday's show. Not like a knock your socks off performance of the Browns that makes you think they're ready to go on a surge. And yet, with the Steelers coming in, it's all there. The table is set for the Browns to get themselves back into the playoff race. It's do or die.
Yes, it is. I mean, I think every week we talked about it. Every Browns game from here on out is that way, and it's a big challenge. I get that Pittsburgh's offense is, probably mired in what will be a season-long slump at this point based on what's happened to their personnel. But it sounds like they might get James Conner back. That's TBD at this point, but that would help because their running game has been an absolute mess. The one other side too, everyone wants to talk about the Browns offense over and over, and their defense has been acceptable for stretches. But one thing that bugs me about them, because I felt like that Bills game could have used, and I think the Steelers game could use it too, is something like we saw last night, like a hometown pick six that flips the game on its butt and puts the Steelers into a hole versus setting their pass rush up all night long. And the Browns have 8 turnovers on the entire year, and 2 since week 4. They have not, where last year they were not a good football team, but they were a turnover machine under Gregg Williams, and it helped them in spots, and it certainly helped their offense. And they have gotten 2 turnovers since week 4. It has not done a lot for a Baker Mayfield attack that, outside of getting Kareem Hunt back at this point, I thought that he made a big difference in that last game. And I'm kind of excited to see what they do with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt together, because I expected very little with the way that they've found a way to not maximize all their weapons. So there's a lot of questions for the Browns going into this. And if they are suddenly down 20-3 and Baker Mayfield's been sacked 6 times and they're talking about all the same stuff we've heard in every Browns game all year, lights out.
Yeah, if you're the Browns, without offensive line, I think the Steelers' front 7 might be the last one you want to face right now. And the Steelers, the next 3 weeks, they have Browns, Bengals, Browns. They could be marching through Ohio like Sherman marching to Savannah.
Wow. Yeah, the Browns tackles especially trying to stop. I think the Browns, like last week, Baker Mayfield had great protection overall, and I think he's been okay most weeks. But, yeah, matching up against T.J. Watt and Dupree, especially on the
Cameron Hayward
on the
playing
edge,
great.
Right, is going to be big-time trouble. They played Chubb and Hunt together. I think you're right pointing that out. What they did, 38 snaps for Hunt and 56 for Chubb out of 69, so that means they were on the field for 25 30 snaps together, which you just do not see in the NFL, and Hunt did add a lot of juice. It was a great point to make about the defense, Marc, because remember that it was kind of like the hipster take of like, hey, their offense is going to be great, this year, but what could really dominate, maybe the best group on that team, is that defensive line. That could be the best defensive line in the league. Maybe I even said that, I don't even know. Hopefully not in that annoying voice. But they haven't taken over at all. Ogunjobi's been pretty quiet. Vernon has been hurt and has been pretty quiet.
Vernon's had a good year.
I guess have you watched their defensive line and thought, okay, this team's taken over?
Like Garrett and Vernon
against good teams.
Yes, Garrett and Vernon have
against
been
Denver.
Really good.
Yes, but against like real teams,
I think you are selling that to some short.
That's fair. Garrett's been great.
Garrett's piling up sacks, but I guess what I'm missing this year is the one staple of better Browns teams is, it gets cold now, and you can put teams to bed with turnovers, with interceptions, and they have a good secondary. It's pretty deep. They've been injured up and down, but I don't know. I just see Pittsburgh hanging around, if not outright taking this thing.
Oh yeah, the way their defense is clearly the best. Group in this game.
What was that, Marc?
I don't know at this point. Oh yeah,
Dan, do you want to? Maybe I'll throw this out there. I did think Mason Rudolph played his best game of the season last week, which is maybe damning with faint praise, but I think he's probably played his best 2 games in a row, incremental improvement. Dan, I don't know if you wanted to throw out the question you did to us downstairs about Wes and Mason Rudolph, or is that not for public, consumption?
I mean, now that you brought it up, I guess I should do it. If Wes, because we know Wes's problems with Mason Rudolph, and on last Thursday's podcast, Wes said he was going to, have an open mind, and then on Sunday's show, you were even angrier with a young man over his play. I just threw out the idea, if Wes were to travel to Pittsburgh and do harm to Mason Rudolph, how would Marc and Gregg approach the support of Wes, both internally, privately, and then in public on the podcast?
Well, you didn't just say harm.
Well, it was a violent act.
Yeah, life-ending harm.
A violent act. No, life-damaging. In the hospital.
I said that, number one, I'd take that public stance of, we need all the facts. We need the information. We need to, I'm not going to take a side here until the case is clear to us. But I also think that people, it's easy to be judgy, and it's easy just to look at what someone does and say, well, case closed, they're a good or bad person. Wes is a very multi-layered individual, as all people are. But Wes, you can see, if you just hang out with him for a couple hours, the many layers. I am not going to jump ship on Wes's friendship based on
Good for you. How about
He's
you?
got that
Greg?
layer of velvet on right now. Look at that thing.
Velveteen
It's
Rabbit.
beautiful. Oh yeah, I'm sticking by him. I'm gonna have the research team or maybe our video department make just like a reel of third down throws by Mason Rudolph, just as a support. Just say, hey, watch this before
I don't know if
you
that's gonna win you over with the
before you
public,
come
but-
to a judgment. Let's watch these 3rd and 11 checkdowns.
Privately, I would support West to the extent that I'd help find him the best lawyer money could buy. This guy's dirty. He'll dig up all this stuff. You can find somebody.
You're going to pay for it too?
I'm going to help. We'll do a GoFundMe. We'll do that again. We'll get it all going, and we'll make sure Wes gets probation max. And he misses very few shows. And then publicly, I'd keep my distance.
That feels.
It's just
that checks out.
It would just be so toxic that I feel like I would.
You have a wife and kids to worry.
I would reserve it. I would say no comment publicly and just say it's a difficult situation for everybody right now, and I'd rather not say anything. And then I'd be working behind the scenes with you.
This is a fascinating topic, one which is wholly unreasonable and would never happen. First of all, I'd be more likely to slip him some HGH than to harm him.
Okay.
Let's get a better version of Mason.
That make you a better quarterback, HGH?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, especially when you're
Wait, no,
especially
bleep that out.
When your tendency is to back into or away from pressure anytime you're about to throw, HGH might help. So I like this team and I enjoy watching them, so I want to see an improved Mason Rudolph, which you may say he's been. I don't think he's improved.
A little bit.
Can I just say, I thought maybe you were looking at my screen. While you guys were initially talking about this, I did one of those A/B tests and looked at the first 6 games for Mason Rudolph and the first 6 games for Gardner Minshew, and there statistically is not a big difference other than some downfield passing.
That is damning of football statistics. That is incredibly damning of football statistics.
I'm out here saying that the A/B test.
You got to watch.
Says he doesn't look.
I don't know
as
why
bad.
you need to go after the Minshew.
I'm just saying No, it's not a shot
What's
against
the
Minshew.
A/B
It's
test?
he's not as bad as people or certain persons, felonious persons perhaps, are painting him out to be.
I would say this: if you watch Minshew real quick, I get hope watching Minshew, and he's exciting. I don't feel that way about Mason.
I think you using stats to try to compare Mason Rudolph to Gardner Minshew says more about you than it does Mason Rudolph.
Numbers are what the numbers are.
Rudolph, there's different numbers though, and the advanced
sure.
metrics he certainly struggles. PFF, which is more just grading him, he's a bottom 5 quarterback, and Minshew is right around average for starters.
Yeah,
They are
I
not
think he's
even-
in between there.
They should not even be mentioned in the same breath together.
I know, because Gardner Minshew is Steve Young. I keep forgetting this.
Gardner
there are-
Minshew knows how to
And
play
we quit
quarterback.
when this guy sits on the bench on Sunday.
What I love is that there are
the crown of thorns.
multi agendas happening here. This is absurd.
I mean, can we calm down a little bit with the Gardner Minshew hero worship? That's all.
People have.
What he's doing to say about him? He didn't play well. He did play well.
He played really well.
He was fine. And you know what? Mason Rudolph is okay so far. Not great. Not the worst
That is
quarterback
your
in the league.
opinion.
I think he's been a pretty big detriment. When you score 8 points, for your off, he's been a pretty big detriment. I do think he's made some improvements of though not seeming as frenetic and going downfield and going through his reads a little bit and not making big mistakes against the Rams. It was a little better. I think it wasn't as tough to watch.
Well, we're going to see
He
how
made
it all
incremental
manifests.
progress.
All right. There you go. You locking this one up, Marc?
No, I feel like I escaped. Wes and I both escaped narrow issues there with the last Browns lock.
Are you guys going to stay in lockstep? Ooh, I like that. Lockstep.
Where are you going to watch this?
Well, we're 2-1, share or 3. We're 2-1 at this point. In lockstep.
Marc was very nice. It was a very generous thing he did while I was, my wings were clipped and I couldn't fly out of the nest. He fed me, and he kept me alive for a while. It might be time for me to fly out of that nest on my own this week.
I also led you to a hideous loss 2 weeks ago, so I don't know about feeding you. But
all right. We will be back on Thursday with 2 shows. We have the preview of Week 11, all the Sunday and Monday games. Also, we will recap Browns and Steelers late Thursday night. Who's on that game? Who's doing that game? It's going to be Wes and Gregg. Marc, you doing that game too?
I offered to, well, maybe you can't do it with the technology we're dealing with, but I could call in or something, but I don't need to. I mean, it's rare that you get to watch your team as a fan, so I wouldn't, either way, we'll survive.
I got to get the dongle.
Got to get that dongle. Oh, I got your dongle. I got your
All right.
dongle for you right here.
Sweet.
I don't
All right.
think people know what that means. But.
Let's go. No, there will be no further explanation. Stan Hanzus signing off for Quiet Storm, the mailman, the old boss, Ricky Hollywood, the idea generator behind the glass. Till Thursday.